Hi, my name's Emery from the Martha O'Brien Center, and I want to talk to you a little bit about spelling. So, chances are, if you're an adult, you found it difficult to find materials on how to spell. Either all the materials are for kids, or they're all for people who are learning English as their second language. Maybe you don't fall into any of those categories. If you're trying to get your GED or HiSET, chances are that you don't fall into either of those categories and you're having trouble finding materials that will actually equip you to become good at spelling. Well, I'm of the belief that you could memorize a lot of rules about spelling, but that might not be the most helpful way for you to just be equipped to read and write well. More importantly, is to understand the basics, maybe learn a few of the most often confused words, and then to keep uh, track of your own learning. What matters most is that you have the tools to work through the words and the types of words that you struggle with most on your own. So, I want to walk you through some tips that I've come up with to help you equip yourself for effective study of spelling. Okay, so first things first, let's debunk some myths about spelling. If you're having trouble spelling, chances are that you've thought that you were stupid or that you had somehow failed in some way. Here's the truth is that having trouble spelling does not mean that you're not smart. Spelling, especially in English, is incredibly difficult. For every rule, it seems like there's a million exceptions, and even the smartest and most well written people struggle with spelling and are often relying on spell check and other word processors in order to spell correctly. So, if you're having trouble spelling, don't give up. Don't believe that you're not smart. That's not going to help you. What is going to help you is to take ownership of your own learning and see how you can best help yourself to improve. The second thing is that some people think that just because they're bad at spelling, they have dyslexia. Dyslexia is a learning disability in which people often will mix around words or letters within words. You might have dyslexia, but just because you have trouble with spelling doesn't mean that you have dyslexia. If you do have dyslexia, then definitely equip yourself to learn best according to the unique challenges of um, of dyslexia. The next thing that I want to go through is what I like to call real world tips for spelling. Because chances are, outside of the classroom or outside of the needing to pass a test like the HiSET, there's not really a lot of reason for you to be studying spelling in depth. The real thing that you need to know is one, you need to be able to figure out when you spelled a word wrong. And number two, you need to be able to fix it. I mean, that makes sense. In the real world, tests aside, what you really need to do in order to express yourself well and to be a good writer is just know when a word is spelled wrong or be able to identify a misspelled word and then equip yourself to figure out how to spell it correctly. So it's not really about becoming a master of spelling so much as problem solving and paying attention to details. So there's two things that I want to talk about for this first tip. First is that if you are using a word processor, such as Microsoft Word, um, then you probably have spell check. And so whenever a word is spelled incorrectly, it's going to have this like squiggly red line that looks something like that underneath it. that lets you know that it's spelled incorrectly, and then you can review the word and figure out how to spell it correctly. And as soon as it's correct, then that will go away. So that's the first tip, is if you're wondering whether you spelled it correctly, then you can put it in word processor and spell check will let you know for you. The other option, and one that is even more important in my opinion, because it applies way beyond the realm of spelling, is to proofread. To proofread means to check over your work, and you should do that always, 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 whether you're writing an email or even a text message, but especially when you're writing an essay or turning in homework, you want to proofread. And that means going back, reading what you've written, making sure that everything's spelled correctly, that the words make sense, that the punctuation is there, that words are capitalized, that your phrases sound right. Proofreading is done best when you kind of read it out loud in your head. So reading it to yourself as if you are a person reading it for the first time is one of the best tips for proofreading. And that's a really great way for recognizing a misspelled word. Now the second part of that is, okay, so let's say you found a word that is misspelled. Now you have to be able to fix it. And there are a few different ways to do this. One is you could look it up in a dictionary, but what are the chances you've got a giant dictionary with you at all times? They're not very high unless you have a phone. If you've got a smartphone, then you've got at your fingertips all that you need to look up words, or in any place you can access the internet. The same is true on computer. So one thing that I often do is I'll just start typing the word into Google, and Google will often complete the word or ask me if I mean a different word, and that usually corrects it. So in this first image, you see that I was looking up the word garish, and I started typing it in, and then it completed the word. It even gave me a definition so I can check to make sure that I was putting in the correct word, and now I know how to spell it. So if you misspell it when you type it into Google, which seems like it's something likely, like let's say I put in that because I thought that there was an E instead of an I, chances are Google would have said that it didn't know what I meant, and it would ask, did you mean garish? And I would say, yes, Google, I did mean garish, and now I know how to spell it. So all of those tools are at your fingertips. Another way is you can go to a website such as dictionary.com, and you can type in the word, once again, your best guess on the spelling, and then it will say, you know what, that's not correct. We don't have results for that, but here's what we think you mean. Oh, actually, yes, that is what I meant, is I meant actually with 2 L's, and now I have the spelling. Okay, and now I want to talk to you about what I call fun tips for spelling. The first is to use a personal dictionary. Whoops, look at me. I spelled personal wrong. Personal dictionary. So by personal dictionary, here's what I mean. If you take a notebook, so let's say I have this notebook that I got, I think from the grocery store for maybe like $1, maybe not even. And what I did is I just wrote letters of the alphabet in the pages A through Z, and just every couple pages writing a letter. And then when I come across a word that I have trouble spelling, I can just write it down in my personal dictionary. So if actually is a word that I actually have trouble spelling, then I'll write it down in my personal dictionary. And now I have a list of words that I personally struggle with. And by writing them down, you are helping yourself remember how to write it in the future, because repetition and that action of writing it correctly will actually solidify it in your mind. So let's say, for example, one of the words that I really struggle with is exercise. I often find myself not knowing how to spell the word exercise. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go to my phone. I'm going to open up Google, and I'm going to type in what I think is the closest I can think of for exercise. So I'm going to say EXERCIZE. So I typed in exercise, EXERCIZE, and notice right below it, it's coming up with examples EXERCISE. And so I'm realizing, oh yeah, that is how you spell exercise. So now I have, thanks to handy Google, the correct spelling of exercise. So now I'm going to go to my personal dictionary, and I'm going to find E, right where I put E, and I'm going to write down exercise. Exercise, EXERCISE, and I'm going to just write it a couple more times, which I know will seem a little bit crazy, but the more you write it, the repetition will help you learn it. So I wrote it down 3 times. I've got exercise, exercise, exercise. And now, hopefully, I will remember how to spell it, and if I forget how to spell it again, I've got it here in my personal dictionary, or I can go back into my personal dictionary and just study some of the words that I might have forgotten. So that's one fun tip. The second fun tip is to copy, which you might be saying to yourself, but Emery, you can't copy. That's wrong. It's cheating. It's not cheating. Let's say I'm taking the HiSET exam, and I see this passage on the HiSET exam that says that's all about the environment, and I'm writing an essay about the environment, and I realize that I don't know how to spell the word environment. Well, lucky for me, I've got the word right back in this passage. I've got the word environmental, and so I can use that to spell the word environment. So, okay, environment. Oh, now I've got it. Let's say that one is very related to the topic that this is about. Let's say it's a word that's not as related to the topic, but might be in the passage or might be somewhere near you. If you're taking a test and you can't go and look at your phone, you might as well look at what you have. I wouldn't spend a ton of time on it, because if you're taking a test, chances are you're timed. But let's say I'm trying to spell the word achieve, and I remember that it's in the passage, or that there might be something similar to it in the passage. So I scan the passage and I say, okay, achieve. I don't remember if it's IE or EI or EE or EA. How do you spell achieve? Well, here's the word achievable. It's not the exact same as achieve, but it has the part of the word that I'm looking for, which is that IE. So now I can take that and I can use it to spell achieve. So use what you have in front of you to equip yourself to spell correctly. Remember to proofread. Remember to copy or to look for examples. And remember to study well and effectively by figuring out when a word is spelled wrong by proofreading, and then finding the correct spelling. You can use your phone, and then you can equip yourself for further learning and for really remembering the correct spelling by recording it in a personal dictionary. So those are my tips for how to spell. So learn what works for you and equip yourself to succeed. Study well, not just hard, and you can become a great speller and also a great writer.